Hi! Hello! Today we're making my favorite ever white bean soup. It's cheap, it's nutritious, and thanks to a few simple techniques that anyone can do, I think it tastes way better than any standard white bean soup you've had. To test if that's actually true, we're gonna do a blind taste test at the end of the video, so stay tuned for that. But for now, let's get cooking. The ingredients in this soup are really budget friendly, and for the most part, they're everyday staples you probably already have on hand or are very easy to find. The most important ingredient, of course, are our beans. These are dried Great Northern beans. And the reason I'm using dried beans instead of canned beans in this recipe is because they're the star of the soup, and they're really gonna make a huge difference in terms of the flavor and the texture. These beans have already been soaked overnight. I soaked them in a lot of water, about 8 cups, and I seasoned them with a generous amount of kosher salt. And I also added 2 teaspoons of baking soda, and that's going to actually tenderize the beans, give them a lot more flavor, and improve their texture. We've also got our mirepoix. We've got 2 heads of garlic, some basics, salt and pepper, olive oil, of course, some red pepper flakes for just a little bit of heat, and some herbs. We've got bay leaves and fresh rosemary and sage. Finally, we have a couple of ingredients that are a bit more specialty ingredients compared to everything else here. We've got white miso and some Better Than bouillon. This is the no chicken base. And these 2 ingredients are really gonna add so much savory depth of flavor to the soup. The only equipment you need for this recipe is a Dutch oven. Very nice one-pot option. Everything's gonna happen right in here. You're gonna get your pot over medium heat and add about 1.5 tablespoons of olive oil. Once the oil is nice and shimmery, you can add the mirepoix, nice big pinch of salt. You don't need to stir this too often. It'll take about 10 minutes for everything to soften. And just in case I didn't mention this is 1 large onion, about 2 cups diced, 3 medium carrots, and 3 ribs of celery. Everything is looking nice and soft, so we can add our red pepper flakes. And you want to stir frequently for about 30 seconds. We're ready to add in our beans, which have been soaked and drained and rinsed. And now we need our water. A little bit of kosher salt and freshly cracked black pepper. I'm gonna increase the heat to bring this to a boil. And in the meantime, we can do a little bit of prep work. For the herbs, we're gonna make a bouquet garni, which is just a French term for a bundle of herbs. I have a large sprig of sage, a large sprig of rosemary, and I'm gonna use 2 dried bay leaves. And then you'll just take a piece of kitchen twine and tie it together in a little package. Our soup is almost at a boil, so we'll grab our Better Than bouillon. And normally when I make a soup, I do use like just an organic store-bought vegetable broth. But when I want something that's gonna take a soup over the top, add a lot of savory oomph, especially when I've got really simple ingredients, this stuff really packs a punch. Make sure you stir this really well to incorporate the Better Than bouillon. You don't want to have like little pockets of it everywhere. And we'll add our bouquet garni and just submerge it into the liquid. We're gonna let everything boil for 10 minutes. This is a tip I learned from Steve Sando over at Rancho Gorda Beans. They make amazing beans. You wanna let your dried beans boil vigorously for 10 minutes and then cook them really low and slow, and that's gonna give you the best texture. So while these boil, we're gonna work on our garlic. For the garlic, we're essentially going to be braising the garlic directly in the soup. First, I'm just gonna trim off these roots since the whole garlic head is gonna go into the soup. And then you can take a vegetable brush or any kind of scrubber brush and just scrub around there. These heads are quite clean, so I don't really see any dirt, but if you see some dirt, you'll wanna scrub that off. You're gonna slice off the top part of the garlic clove so that you can expose the cloves. And any outer layers that are super papery, you can also discard. This is what you're kind of looking for, and we'll do the same thing with the other one. The soup has been boiling for 10 minutes, so I have turned off the heat, and we're gonna drizzle the garlic with 2 tablespoons of olive oil. Very important, do not skip this step. Olive oil is also really the only source of fat in this recipe, so it is gonna bring some much needed richness. Now we'll cover the soup, and instead of simmering it like a traditional soup on the stove, we're going to pop this in the oven. It's going to braise in the oven, and this has 2 benefits. 1, it's completely hands-off from here. You don't need to come and saunter to the kitchen and check every 10 minutes to make sure your beans are cooking appropriately. And 2, in my experience, the beans get a little bit creamier when they're baked or braised in the oven instead of on the stove. So this is gonna go in a 350, oh wow, that's heavy. This is gonna go in a 350 Fahrenheit oven for an hour. If your beans are bigger, say cannellini beans, you'll probably need closer to 75, 80 minutes. While the soup was in the oven doing its magic, I made a second white bean soup that didn't use any of the ingredients or techniques that I think make my soup really special. So dried herbs instead of fresh herbs, canned beans instead of dried, vegetable broth from a carton instead of better than bouillon, no miso, and I simmered the soup on the stove instead of cooking it in the oven. When both versions are done, we're gonna bring up my partner Max to do a blind taste test of both soups to see if the techniques I use make a noticeable enough difference. All right, time to check on our soup in the oven. It's been about an hour. Whenever you're cooking dried beans, you want to taste at least a few beans because they might cook unevenly. One bean might be totally creamy and done, and if you don't check, there might be some beans in there that aren't quite done. So always test a few. Yep. 5 for 5, baby. All right, now you can scoop out that bouquet garni. We don't need that anymore. We're also going to pick out these heads of garlic, but we're not going to discard those. Just set them aside to cool a bit. Now for our miso. If I were to just stir it into the soup, it might not dissolve well and you'd get like little clumps of miso everywhere. So instead, we're gonna make a miso slurry. Just ladle some hot broth into a glass. It's okay if you get a couple beans in there. This is 1 tablespoon of white miso, which is a mellow, slightly sweet miso. Perfect for plant-based dishes where you don't wanna overwhelm the flavors too much. No chunks. And then just pour it back in. Once these garlic heads are cool enough to touch, make sure you don't burn yourself, you're gonna squeeze the cloves out of the skins directly into the soup. Ooh, look at them go. Get that garlic nicely incorporated into the soup. You will get little bits of whole garlic, but they're gonna be super soft and buttery and almost caramelized. It's gonna be delicious, nothing like raw garlic. And I always finish my soups with a drizzle of good quality olive oil, just for that luxurious mouthfeel. All right, Max, your turn. Come on over. Taste test time. Max, how would you rate your recipe tasting skills?
Poorly.
Okay, so we're off to a good start. So to ensure that you don't know which soup is which, we're gonna have to blindfold you. We don't have a blindfold, but we do have a sleep mask. So you're gonna have to put this on.
Okay. This feels so uncomfortable. It feels like my hand's about to go into the
Here's bowl one.
of soup.
That's like 2 edges of the bowl.
Do I just take it to the mouth?
Yeah. Just slurp it up.
There's a spoon, right?
Yeah.
This is embarrassing, but can you just put some on the spoon? I don't know how much I'm getting. Okay, I can do this. I've eaten food before. Is this the second one?
No. I feel like I'm feeding a child. Your hand's all in the soup.
This is not how you feed a child.
Okay, before you take off your blindfold, I am going to cover these so you can't tell what's what. All right, you can turn around.
Oh my God, it's so bright in here now.
I can't tell what's what. Tell us about the first soup and then the second soup.
That one has the flavor of canned soup. Honestly, canned bean soup might be more flavorful than that. It was very light and subtle, and not in like a fancy restaurant way. I didn't have a lot of bean flavor.
Okay, what about the second soup you tried?
That one I hope is yours. It was really good. If I got this wrong, we're gonna have to do some really good editing. Yeah, that was super good. The flavor was just like way more savory, more woodsy, more chickeny a little bit, I guess. Eating blindfolded is not fun, but the soup was very good and I would be excited to eat it.
All right, you guys heard it here. This white bean soup, definitely worth making and doing those special little techniques. You can find the full printable recipe by scanning this QR code or check the link in the description box below. Thanks so much for watching. Bye.
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 Bye.